Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I finally have another art doll video up on my channel. So this is part of my new Decadent collection. It is a unicorn themed collection. There's a couple of pieces available. So there's two Decadent wall arts with a unicorn horn. There's one art doll, which is what you see here, and there's two cupcakes that are sold as sort of like a set. So you can check those out at creaturesandthat.com. And basically this is my first resin doll for a while. I haven't really been creating too many resin dolls lately. I've been creating more of like a one-off pieces using polymer clay. So it's really nice to do like a quicker doll this time. And with the resin dolls, they are a little bit cheaper than those one-off dolls. So you can find all these pieces in my shop at creaturesandthat.com. I also have payment plans available, so that goes for anything in my shop. Just shoot me a message on my website and I can go through how I do payment plans. I'm super flexible as well, so it doesn't hurt to ask. So this is basically a resin cast of something that I sculpted a while ago out of monster clay, molded in silicone and then cast in resin. I added the horn, the unicorn horn, on top of the head using some epoxy sculpt, and that's just like a sculpting medium that dries really, really hard, and you just mix a 2-part equal mix, and it you have maybe like an hour or so to work with it if you're in a cooler environment, and obviously less if you're in a warmer environment. So I am going through and just painting all the little pieces that need to be painted, so everything that's not going to be covered in faux fur. And I'm just using water-based acrylic paints for this. The paints that I use are mainly from Derivian Matisse, and they're just like kind of cheap paints that you can find in your local craft store. Liquitex are good. I also use Chromacryl, which is also a good brand, but I think it's only here in Australia that you can get it. But I really like the texture and the consistency of their paints. And super cheap as well. So for this one, I am painting the eyes in, as you can see. I normally do glass eyes, but for this one it's so small, and it's one of my older sculpts as well. So I sculpted it without the intention of putting glass eyes inside. So the eyes are a little bit more round than what is needed when I do the glass eyes. If you want to know how I do glass eyes, I do have a tutorial in my shop as well, where I go through the whole process of casting glass eyes inside of resin. So for this little doll, I am using a plastic ball and socket armature. This is my smallest size, which I think is 1/8 size. I don't have much of this in stock left because it seems to be the popular one. And basically for the body, I create kind of like a form. And basically the form is like a muscle tone that you get underneath the skin, so-called skin of the body. And I basically create all of that muscle tone using needle felting. And what I'm using for the needle felting is just polyfill, and this polyfill comes in large sort of packs that you can get from your craft store. It's the same sort of things that you can get in like couch cushions. And it's really, really great for using as needle felting as opposed to using like alpaca fiber or something when that gets really expensive. So I did experiment with a couple of things, and I found this was like the most inexpensive, and you can achieve the same thing. It's going to be covered in faux fur anyway, or material anyway. So I think it works really well for using it as a form. The point of the pipe cleaners is so that polyfill has something to stick to, otherwise it's quite slippery and it moves around quite a bit and sort of unwinds itself. So once I'm happy with the way the body's looking, it doesn't have to be perfect, because again, you're going to do some more sculpting when you add that faux fur or the material. If you're using a thin material, you have to be a bit more accurate with your detailing on that needle felting. But when it's faux fur, you don't have to be as accurate as when you're not using when you're using the material. So basically what I do is I start off with kind of the torso piece to begin with, and that acts as like a good base and for your extremities to sew onto. So I roughly cut out a shape that will cover that whole torso piece and sort of trim it up around the body so it conforms to that needle felting that you did before. And it works really well, I find, and you can sort of trim off little bits and pieces, and then I start sewing everything together using a lattice stitch. It takes quite a bit of time to do, but I think the results are heaps better than like my old ways of doing things, which I done on a sewing machine. So yeah, I find that yes, it takes a lot longer, but I think refining the body a little bit better by doing all that hand sewing I prefer to do it. I just like the results a little bit better. So once I've got all of that faux fur sewn on, I'm not going to film the whole thing because that's just a nightmare. I then glue all of the little pieces together on, so the fabric pieces to the resin pieces, and then I can start trimming and adding all the little details. So this one I trimmed basically everything off. And for the mane, I am doing really subtle colored pastel mane, and this is using alpaca fiber. I'm going to be doing a video on my Patreon, a little bit more detail on what I do for this mane, but you can sort of get the point here. But if you want to know more, I will have that video over on my Patreon if you want to check that out for my $5 and up tiers. So it took a little bit of time to do the hair work for this one, but I think it's worth it, and I chose like a wavy fiber as well, and I think it works really, really nicely for this particular doll, and it's a nice subtle color as well. And these little details that I'm adding now are just sort of like a spur of the moment detail that I thought I'd do, and they're just basically, I think they're supposed to be replicate bubbles when you're doing resin work, but I thought that would work really well for this doll, and I thought I'd add some onto the back here. Just to add a little bit more subtle pastel colors and sort of bring it back into the colors of the mane, because I thought it was just looking a bit too white, so I added these little pieces, and I'm glad I did because I really liked the way it looked. And they're just like little beads that you can get online. So yeah, and that's kind of basically the whole process of making this little one. Like I said, it is available in my shop at creaturesandnet.com, so definitely check that out. Send me a message if you want to do a payment plan. All is welcome, so yeah, don't be scared to send me a message. You can also check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Creatures of Nat. My shop, creaturesandnet.com, and my Patreon as well, same name. And thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Really, really appreciate it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!